Welcome to Wait, What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, 𝗦𝗡𝗏.
And I'm Tim McGee.
Well, we hit the unofficial midpoint of the summer with the playing of MLB's All-Star Game and Home Run Derby this week. I got to be honest with you, that kind of bums me out. But, you know, I get to turn it over to you to cheer me up and say what's on your mind. But wait, before I do, I wanted to say happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
And hope you had a great one over this past weekend.
Very nice. Thank you very much. It's always nice to wake up on this side of the grass.
Yeah, there you go.
Today is traditionally known as the slowest day in sports, even though there are MLS matches and some WNBA games. But I don't know about you, partner, but I got a ton of stuff I want to talk about today. Yeah. So where to start? Let's start with what you brought up in your opening, which is the All-Star Game. So for the first time in the history of the game, they had a swing-off, which sounds like something that comes out of 1970s New York City counterculture. But game was tied after 9 innings, and the NL prevailed. And Kyle Schwarber of the Phillies, another one of your adopted hometowns,
That's right.
Philadelphia.
Still love Schwarbs.
Won the MVP. But I always like the MLB All-Star Game because it's the one that is most like the regular season games for the respective sports.
I find it a little interesting, some of the things they added into the game, because some years ago they added these points where the game was going to really mean something in terms of home team advantage, home field advantage for the World Series. You know, and the American League has just dominated this thing, right? For, I think, like now maybe 10 out of the last 12 years they've won this. But last night, of course, the National League prevailed in this swing off. And they also added in all of the mic'd up players, which is great. And I thought they did a pretty nice job with that. The interviews went great. My new guy, PCA, center fielder for the Cubs, Pete Crow Armstrong, did a segment, and he was great on it. It was a really fabulous interview with him while he was in the field. They had several other players mic'd up as well, including like starting pitchers, which was a little wild. I found that a little how could that not be distracting? And the only reason I bring that up is because it seems as though if they want the players to take it truly seriously, unlike, say, the NBA All-Star Game, that stuff might prevent that. I'm not knocking it. I get it. You're trying to bring in new audiences. And I did find the game overall pretty entertaining. And it's not as though the players came out and didn't want to perform. One thing about the swing off that bothered me a bit is, I love that Schwarbs won it, by the way. I still see him as a Cub, even though I like the fact that he's on the Phils now, is if these guys were the ones selected to be in the swing off, and Schwarber was by the National League, you should have to be in the Home Run Derby the day before.
Huh, interesting take.
I mean, why if you're, and the Home Run Derby was actually pretty awesome. I mean, these guys are jacking the ball like crazy, other than your guy Jazz Chisholm Jr., who seemed to struggle a bit, but he probably shouldn't have been in that competition. These guys are like hitting bullets right out of the stadium. And the one thing about that, though, why can't ESPN figure out how to broadcast that well? The StatCast version of it on ESPN2 seemed way better to me than the main broadcast. They can't capture the ball going out. They try all these different angles and it never really works. Anyway, that was my thought. I mean, it doesn't go into extra innings. It goes instantly into this swing off, and then you just go to this interesting format. But you can't. You have to give credit to Schwarber. 3 swings, 3 home runs.
Yeah, pretty cool. Here's what I would suggest for the Home Run Derby. One of the things they can do is put a track on the warning track and put 4 or 5 cameras along that track and have them move, and so that then the producer can go to the one and show the ball coming overhead. I think that would be a cool view. But another Cub player, Kyle Tucker, talking about the players being mic'd, I thought it was a really nice tribute to Clayton Kershaw. I liked the fact that he was mic'd up, and he gave up a ball that was hit really hard, and Kyle Tucker made a really nice play out in left field. And what I really liked was after the inning, Clayton Kershaw talking to all the players, who were congratulating him as he came off the field. It was fun, guys. It was fun. This was fun. Thanks, man. This was fun. I truly meant I think he meant it. I thought he, because he got in as a legend. He didn't make it based on his pitching performance this year. He was sort of the legends pick, or whatever they call it.
And he had a good little stint out there as well, and that last pitch, and he got to strike out. That was very, very cool. I do want to go back to what PCA said in his talk. They asked him a question while he's in the middle of playing in center field, and I'm totally fanboying here, and Cubs fanboying here, but they asked him, "What do you say to young players that say they want to be like you?" Because he's a really exciting baseball player.
Oh, he's fast as hell.
And he said, "I tell them not to be anything like me, to be yourself." And that's like the classic line, but he delivered it so well in that moment of watching rather than at some interview in a sound studio. And I thought it was just a perfect moment to drop something like that. So credit to him. Yes, I'm a fan, and I like watching him play. I like what he means.
What?
But, yeah.
You're a Cubs fan?
A little bit. I did get to see my Cubs. Well, I saw a split. I saw the Yankees win one on Friday night and the Cubs take one on Saturday. I did not go to the Sunday game where the Cubs took the series, though. Sorry, but you know.
No, after a statement win on Friday, the Yankees did not look particularly good the rest of the weekend against your Cubbies. So while we're on the topic of baseball, the owners and the Players Association are going to be going into CBA discussions next year. Not surprisingly. The Players Association is claiming that the owners want a hard salary cap. The owners are saying they have not put together a framework yet. I do think it's pretty safe to assume that owners will look for a hard salary cap, lest they be protected from themselves by not having a cap. They're the only major North American league that doesn't have a hard salary cap. It has the luxury tax. But what I find particularly interesting is that Rob Manfred is going and speaking to, I guess, the players he considers most influential within the Players Association directly, rather than going through the Players Association. I think there was some question last time as to whether or not the Players Association was being fully transparent with their rank and file and things like that. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I think the conventional wisdom is there will be some sort of work stoppage.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting point to be made to the players at large, though, and that is if you're not, for the rank and file players, I should say, because the luxury tax situation clearly has been meaningless to the Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, and a few others, I guess. But it means something to, some teams that are way under it, of where they pay. I mean, the Dodgers situation is just like money seems to be no object, and it doesn't matter what level that gets set at. So either it gets raised or they put a hard cap on, and I still think, what is it going to have to be at the level that, say, the Dodgers are spending at if they were to do it? So it will be a very interesting negotiation this time, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. What I find interesting, and you touched upon it, these small market teams, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, are the two that come to mind immediately. Just don't have the financial wherewithal to compete with the big market teams. But it's interesting, there has not been a back-to-back winner in a World Series since the Yankees won 3 in a row in 98, 99, and 2000. But in the last 25 years, there's only been one small market team that's won, and that's the Royals when they beat the Mets in 2015. So if you're Manfred, on one side you can say, listen, there's parity. There hasn't been a repeat champion in 25 years, but you look at some of the teams that have won over the last 25 years. The Giants won a few. The Red Sox have won a few. The Cubs finally broke the curse in 2014. Houston, which is a big market now, won. LA, obviously. Atlanta.
Well, you're right to point that out, and the World Series certainly is the ultimate indicator of success in Major League Baseball. However, I don't know if I agree with that. And what I'm trying to say, in terms of the ultimate metric, yes. But the Yankees are all. When's the last time they weren't competitive? When's the last time the Dodgers?
They didn't make the playoffs 2 years ago.
Yeah, they suck.
That was David. Horrible. For those of you listening,
they're horrible. Okay, but my point. There's teams that remain in the mix partly because of that.
You don't think
partly, largely because of that. But I'm not saying I agree with the point that baseball is unbelievable that way. Teams that have had the Marlins won 2 World Series with shit. Salaries.
They had shit the next year when they tore apart the team after both championships. Right. But you don't think Ben Cherington, sitting in his office in Pittsburgh, wouldn't like even half the financial resources he had when he was running the Red Sox?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. And the question is which way is it going? Is it moving down to meet the needs of the smaller market teams, or is it raising up? And the smaller market teams aren't necessarily going to be able to get to that level.
I think
so.
There has to be a floor.
Yeah, got it.
Under which teams can't go in terms of their spending. There needs to be some sort of cap. Clearly, the financial disincentive of the luxury tax is not enough to stop teams like the Dodgers, like the Mets, and to a lesser extent, quite frankly, the Yankees. Hal Steinbrenner has tried to put some sort of constraints on Brian Cashman when he puts together his roster.
Yeah. Another thing I'll say, and I don't know what the worst 5-year span, say, of the Yankees has been. I'm expanding my pool here.
Well, it was probably too young for me to remember, but from 65 to 73 when Steinbrenner won it, and then they didn't get back to the World Series until 76. But last year was one of the longest droughts, right? Because they hadn't been there. So 2009 to 24 is 15 years.
But baseball has the challenge of the small number of teams that make it. Even in the era of the wild card, you're getting in if you win your division, and then 3 wild cards per league. So it's not a layup, especially when some divisions have great years, say. So I'm not trying to make an excuse for the Yankees at all in this discussion. I'm just saying I think that the good teams that have the higher salary caps over time, that consistently are have the highest salaries, tend to be performing pretty well. I'm not saying it's only because of that. I mean, the Mets have this massive salary. We'll see if they hold on. I expect they're going to end up in the playoffs.
Well, I try to put myself in the shoes of a fan, a Royals fan, a Pirates fan. They have no real hope. Yes, the Royals won 10 years ago. I acknowledge that, and I recognize that. But
I actually agree with that point. Yeah.
And you're trying to grow the game. You're taking 2 of the teams and making it Colorado's terrible. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But Denver's not a small market. They're just a terrible team.
White Sox.
Yeah, but again, huge market, terrible team. That has been around since the dawn of professional sports. You have well-run teams and you have poorly run teams. Let's face it, half the teams in the league finish 100. But if you don't have a chance at any point, I imagine it's hard to maintain your fandom. And I applaud those who do remain fans despite not really having a chance for your team to be in the World Series. But I think if you want to grow the game, you've got to address that. Continue to grow the game because they've had some success over the last couple of years.
Want to move on to I guess what we'd call a serious storyline, and that is the news that broke not long ago about Tim Leiweke, one of the biggest legends in this industry has ever known, and his company, Oakview Group, OVG, was basically indicted and
on federal charges.
On federal charges of rigging bids, and it all centered on the University of Texas Moody Center, and he's got. He's looking at a max penalty of 10 years and $1 million fine. I don't expect that is going to happen, but this is a very serious issue. OVG is partnered up with Irving Azoff, who was the founder and former head of Ticketmaster, and all of this is intertwined with promises made between Legends and OVG and Live Nation and Tim, someone I've worked with before, and like I say, I mean, he's an amazing individual, certainly up on the Mount Rushmore of salespeople in this business, and probably more. I mean, he's overseen major operations, AEG, the Maple Leafs organization, and now OVG. Well liked, well respected. But this business has always been a little shady, and especially when it involves the tickets. And I'm not saying that this has gone on, but it wouldn't surprise me if it had, if this has come out now, particularly around this, because now they're going to look into everything.
Yeah, what I found interesting was OVG is an unindicted co-conspirator in this indictment, and they've agreed to pay a $15 million fine. Now, I don't know if they've admitted any guilt or culpability in that agreement. And Legends, it paid a $1.5 million fine.
Yeah, and that suggests they're basically providing the information, right?
Yeah, and the bid rigging, as you said, is the crux of the charges, but they're charging him under antitrust statutes, primarily the Sherman Antitrust Act. And Ticketmaster and 𝗷𝗍𝗄, as you mentioned earlier, they're no stranger to antitrust litigation either. So does this stuff go on more than we know about it in the, in the industry? I don't know. I'm sort of like Claude Rains in Casablanca. I'm shocked, I tell you, to learn there's gambling going on in Casablanca. Here are your winnings.
Yeah, I don't think anything in terms of deals being struck and favors being done and you do this for me all day. I mean, we know that obviously goes on. But these are, especially when you're dealing with public institutions, like in the case of University of Texas, I mean, this takes on a more serious level. And just to set the stage here, in case you don't know, most people that listen here know OVG quite well. They manage or advise more than 300 venues worldwide. I mean, this is a global force that Tim Leiweke really built, and that includes, of course, Seattle's Climate Pledge Arena and Belmont, where the Islanders play. I mean, ton of involvement. They're tied with Madison Square Garden in some ways, or have been. So it's the Ticketmaster thing, I think, because of that being tied to Live Nation and going in and not disclosing, this is what's being reported, and part of this is that as the bid process was going through and they're advising, part of their deal is they're advising how a venue, how a municipality, how a whatever should be operating this, and we'll manage the deal, and we think that Ticketmaster is the place to go. And those were all done in advance. Those were all like guaranteed, and there was money being exchanged from Live Nation to OVG, and it sounds like possibly personally through him. Listen, he'll have his day. He'll have good attorneys. Nothing that happens, it'll take the bloom off the rose of an amazing career, of course. But this guy has been one of the giants of this business.
Absolutely. And, it goes without saying, but we'll say it anyway. He's innocent until proven guilty. But I do, given proliferation of public money going into private buildings, I'm sure there are a lot of local, state governments looking at deals where OVG was involved to see if there was anything untoward going on.
Mm-hmm. What else do you have?
Well, as you said in your open, sometimes irreverent, sometimes cynical. We went through the serious. I want to go to the irreverent for a second. You, I think, listeners of this show are a huge fan of Joey Chestnut. And, 76 hot dogs in the most recent Coney Island Nathan's hot dog eating contest. But the list of his accomplishments, I saw them the other day, and I'm not going to go through the entire list. But I if he were a stock, I'd be shorting him right now. I don't know how the guy is still alive, quite frankly. 41 hard-boiled eggs in 8 minutes. 20 corned beef sandwiches in 10 minutes. 23 6-inch cheesesteaks in 10 minutes. God bless him, 5.9 pounds of funnel cake in 10 minutes. 182 large chicken wings. Here's one that I can really get behind. 121 Twinkies in 6 minutes. The list goes on, but wow.
Yeah, he's remarkable. Obviously versatile. I mean, we know him for his hot dog prowess, but he's obviously versatile. What I didn't hear you mention, because we covered this a lot on the last week's show, we've had some what I think are entertaining social posts on the matter, but I didn't hear you mention whether or not he's engaged on the poutine side, where my man Patrick Bertoletti, deep dish, by the way, deep dish Bertoletti, I'm from Chicago, seems to be, I think, plays a strong hand on the poutine side.
If he has competed, he does not have a record in poutine.
Yeah, I'm just guessing he hasn't focused on. I don't understand how you could be so good on the hot dog side, like so dominant as we covered last week, and even have time to dabble in these other disciplines.
54 cow brain tacos.
Okay.
Could you imagine if somebody came to him like maybe the Poutine Trade Council came to him and said, Joey, we'd really love you to be in this poutine eating contest. And Joey goes, nah, I'm sorry, it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
I want to be as standards.
Well, that's why it was funny when he did the plant-based hot dog deal. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to wonder, is it just like, let's see what this dude will eat. Like, I have to tell you.
He's like the fat kid you went to elementary school with who would eat anything.
I reached out to 𝗔𝗹𝗏 after last week's episode and let him know that we had talked about him and that we covered. And he's on board to come on the show, by the way. I cannot wait to have George on the show.
Well,
and
listeners.
Regale us with his, but we may have to put that off until next year.
Listeners, you're stuck with us through at least next 4th of July because when David wants a guest, David gets the guest.
We are not going to stop recording the show until we get 𝗔𝗍𝗏 on.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention the league, but you and I got big time by a league this past 2 weeks. Yeah, we're not going to say who it was. They're going to
rue the day. They're going to rue the day.
They are going to rue the day that we were not big enough.
Yeah, I don't even know how they think that's like they are in position to big time us, but.
No, you know what? The only thing I will say was not pickleball.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about pickleball in quite some time. Not a lot of news coming out of the pickleball world.
Well, one of the pieces of news, and this could tie into a quick discussion about Wimbledon, was one of who had been a fairly top, almost ready to break through American player, Jack Sock, had started playing pickleball competitively, and I think he's high on the lists of pickleball. I actually spoke with an agent recently that says it does a lot of tennis work, and he says they're killing it in pickleball. Like a lot of things coming through to them on the pickleball side. So I kind of bit my tongue a little bit and didn't go there on that. But the reason I bring up Jack Sock is because one of the, I think, stupider news stories in the sports world, and there's a tie to business because it involved the famous investor Bill Ackman, who in essence bought, it sounds like, his way into the Hall of Fame event in Newport. And he had played with Jack Sock in a doubles competition in basically a professional event. And he got dusted. He didn't go well. And the thing that just blew me away, and it's kind of classic mentality, I think, sometimes of people that have that much money and maybe lose a little touch. Maybe they just lose a little bit of touch. A little bit of touch with reality was, and I'm sure in his mind he didn't mean that much by what I'm about to read, but this is Bill Ackman. I could give a speech to 2,000 people, no problem. But to get in front of 150 people to play tennis is a little different. Really? Like you play in your backyard, I'm sure, all the time, and you probably bring people in of pretty high quality, top college players, et cetera, and you do well, and they make you feel good, and then you go into a professional event when there's actually a paying customer base and you're playing with other pros, and that's different than giving a speech. You just think that, wow, I could do something that a lot of people can't do, so I must be able to do everything that a lot of people can't do. I don't know. I just thought that was and I'm sure he, in his mind, was trying to be humble, but it just says everything.
If he would have
Andy
said,
Roddick loved this, by the way.
So the two things I would say. One, if Bill Ackman had said that to me, I would have said, well, you know why, Bill? You suck. You're not a professional tennis player. You're not even close. Go buy front row seats like a regular billionaire, for God's sake.
Well, he did. I think he added to his donation after because he had given a ton of money. I don't know.
And the only thing that really disappointed me about that whole story is he didn't get more scorn and ridicule heaped upon him.
Roddick came at him hard, which
but there were some
Roddick.
other memes and videos that came out that just absolutely trash. It's just they that old saying, the rich, they're not like you and me. Because I try not to be an asshole.
All right, I do want to talk quickly about Wimbledon. There was something that struck me about a couple of things that struck me about Wimbledon. The third of the 4 Grand Slam events. Very much looking forward to the U.S. Open coming up. Is on the men's side, we are about to witness this rivalry between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz that I think can go on for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And we probably are finally seeing the final years of Djokovic. Would not be surprised if he wins another slam, maybe 2, but he clearly is not as good as Sinner and Alcaraz now. These guys are so good. The 2 best players, again, go to the final. This time, Sinner wins in 4 sets. was stronger on the grass in Wimbledon.
Yeah.
On the women's, but there were a couple solid American performances. Ben Shelton, I think he has a potential future to get there. Fritz Taylor made it to the semis, but these guys are not at the level of Sinner and Alcaraz. On the women's side, an American made it to the final, not the one any of us expected to get there. It was Amanda
Anisimova.
And it was she somehow beat Sabalenka in the semifinals, and then just was absolutely overwhelmed by Swiatek from Poland in the final. 6-0, 6-0. And I mean, her speech was so heartwarming, and I felt, so bad for her. And she handled it great, but it was very emotional. But she clearly is not at the level of a Swiatek, but she got to the finals. But there are a ton of other American women that I think feel like they're on the verge. And if Sabalenka can be beaten, who knows? Coco Gauff obviously went out early. That was very disappointing coming off of her win at the French. Jessica Pegula went out pretty early as well, but there are a number of American women that I think are pretty close, and hopefully that'll happen. But I think tennis is at a pretty cool place. One of the other things that I don't know why I wrote to you over the weekend. I like my favorite tennis pastime now is see who's going to be in the big either celebrity boxes or the player boxes. And as Jannik Sinner was going up to thank his team, hug it out with his team, and all those things. Like one of the first people he encounters is Seal. Seal's in his box, gives him a big hug. Jannik Sinner, by the way, is Italian. And then I see Stefano Domenicali, who is the head of Formula One. Now, my first thought was, okay, he's Italian, it kind of makes sense. What I forgot is that Jannik Sinner is actually an ambassador for Formula One. Mm-hmm. He's been to some races. I've seen him at races. But one of the things he said in his speech was, I was very happy that Formula One didn't have a race and my brother could actually attend the race. His brother was in the box as well, because normally he's such a fan of F1 that he would have gone to the race instead of seeing his brother play in a final at Wimbledon. Anyway, I get a kick out of seeing who's in the box, and other than of course the agents and the coach.
Well, I love he was actually in the royal box, but Hugh Grant was out cold. Sleeping. You would have thought he was on the couch watching Downton Abbey or something. He was out cold during the match.
I think from a viewership standpoint, it looks like both the women's and men's had slight upticks. I think coming off of the great French Open on both the men's and the women's side, I think the interest is there. Hopefully that'll carry over. As a tennis fan and someone that loves the U.S. Open, I do like seeing these events do well. One of the other things that was funny, by the way, I kind of think Chris Fowler might be the most underrated play-by-play guy on the ESPN roster. I think he does a great job on football, but he's incredible on tennis. And he lets McEnroe do his thing, and he lets Chris Evert do her thing. He's really solid. Just shout out to Chris Fowler, because I think he's a good guy. I got to meet him at a Sheryl Crow concert once, which I thought was pretty cool. Just saying,
Boom.
I know, yeah.
Boom. You're just
Chris
dropping.
Fowler. Just ran into Chris Fowler backstage at a Sheryl Crow concert. That was pretty cool. I was telling Karen as we were seeing him, I'm a big fan of this guy. He's really, really good. And his wife came up to him. She said, I'm a big fan of his too. Hi, So I thought that was very cool. Anyway.
Very nice. While we're on shout-outs, can I give a couple more?
Well, or we can wait until the end and do our shout-outs, but you can do whatever you want.
All right, let's do it at the end. Fine.
Do you have any other story? Do we want to talk do we want to close out the story on Club World Cup?
Before we do that, just a quick note. OKC, who recently won the NBA championship, just signed their top 3 players to long-term deals. So SGA, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams. So that team's going to be together for the next several years. They're going to be a force for quite some time.
Yeah, that's putting the rest of the league and the rest of the GMs on notice, big time.
Yeah. Chet Holmgren's only 23 years old.
Yeah. They're good.
Yeah.
They're good, and they like playing with each other. They're going to be good.
They like doing AT&T commercials even better.
So Chelsea crushes PSG, which I think most people think probably was the best team going into this thing. They look pretty dominant.
PSG was one of the best teams in the world for the last few months.
And MetLife Stadium in Jersey. They said it was 81,000, a little over 81,000. The capacity is 82.5. During the halftime concert, the upper deck looked a little empty, but it might have been just people weren't into Coldplay.
I also think they papered the house a little bit.
Yes, they did.
I got it. By the way, Chris Sontag, who's big in soccer circles, he actually invited me to the match. I couldn't do it, so I want to just give him a thank you on it.
So we were tough on this event from pretty much the opening of it. I will say this. It has I feel like it has a future. There's something there. It's a pretty cool concept. I think the timing always has to be right. We'll see where it goes next. Certainly the numbers weren't horrible from a viewership standpoint here from what I saw. It got a huge share in France, for instance. So I think that the rest of the world, I mean, you're a PSG fan, you want to watch every match they play in. It doesn't matter if it's a friendly. So it seems like it has a place and there is some interest. I thought the staging of it ended up being not necessarily the end, and there's some issues with that, but ended up being pretty nice. It seemed like the team was very into it. The trophy was like choice-looking trophy, I'll say that. I want to give a shout-out. We've mentioned Gordon Kane on this show before.
Oh, so you can do a shout-out, but I can't.
No, it's not a shout-out. It's on this story. It's not on this story. You were like referring to the shout-out category. This is not a shout-out in the shout-out category.
One of the shout-outs was going to be to Chelsea.
Well, you can definitely do that at shout-out if it's within a story. I thought we've covered these bylaws. We have no bylaws, people.
I don't follow rules. I'm like George. I'm like a bad boy, like George Costanza. You saying you want a piece of me?
If you ever show up at an event with like jeans with them, like the cuffs tucked up, with a jacket, like with your '55 Chevy, trying to look like at a softball.
Old '55.
Yeah.
One of the Eagles' first hits.
But
Gordon King.
You interrupted my shout out to Gordon King. He wrote a great piece, a good LinkedIn post about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this event. I thought was pretty solid. One of the things that has to happen, and they have just struck a deal with most of the players' associations, but apparently, kind of the universal one, which is 𝗙FPRO, wasn't in attendance at this. But there are some new rules being put in place. Right, you may have more information on this, about the length of time between matches and certain windows that have to be guaranteed to the players, because these players are going through a lot.
Can I just make one? I think it's a clarification. You said we were tough on the Club World Cup, but we were really just reporting what Enzo Maresca, the manager of Chelsea, was saying when he was critical of the conditions and the rain delays and the scheduling and things like that. He can go cry in a big pile of money right now that his club can now spend on additional players. They won $110 million and a nice piece of hardware for winning Club World Cup.
Yeah, I questioned FIFA a little bit on this thing as a money grab, and was the timing right, and was this the right way to go about trying to build up the interest a year in advance of FIFA World Cup, particularly running up against CONCACAF Gold Cup time.
So I would say a couple of things. Number one, I don't think you need to build up anticipation or interest in the World Cup. I think it's going to be there regardless. The 1994 World Cup was the most commercially successful World Cup to date. Every match, if my memory serves me well, sold out. We've now gone from 32 teams to 48 teams in the 2026 World Cup here in North America. So I think it's almost certain to surpass that World Cup in terms of commercial success. I do think that it served a purpose in terms of how our cities, how our venues, how our first responders going to act, react, respond, and work having an event of that scale in their city. That I think, and again, we have said it before, we don't like to become political on this show. They had the added level of complexity on Sunday at MetLife Stadium when the president was there. That raises security to a level that most people are never subjected to unless they happen to go to an event where the president is there.
Yeah, I've been to several events where the president shows up, and that's
yeah. Did you meet one? Did you meet one back to the Cheryl Crow concert?
I didn't meet one. But I have, and it's a drag. It sucks for the people attending the event. Not one with this current president. So, yeah, it does. But I agree with you. I do think that dry run for a lot of people, like working out the things that need to get better. And I'm sure there are things high on the list of that are coming out of Infantino, as well as FIFA, event people and the local organizers that have to, make sure this runs smoothly, because it's going to be a whole new level in terms of people that want to come in for this event. And, we'll see what the atmosphere is in general as it relates to that type of, short-term tourist immigration and so forth, or not immigration, but, short-term visitor visas. Yeah.
I was skeptical of the Club World Cup when it started. I'm always skeptical of tournaments that seem to pop up almost out of nowhere, especially when the global football calendar is so packed. But I will say that the play, certainly, there were some teams early in the tournament who shouldn't have been on the same pitch with some of the world's best clubs. But the level of play got better as the tournament went on. And notwithstanding Chelsea dismantling PSG in the finals, you had ostensibly one of the best clubs in the world playing a team that was somewhat down for the last couple of years, that by all indications now, and it'll be interesting to see next month when the Premier League starts again, but whether Chelsea's back. Again, I don't want to get political, but I did find it quite humorous. There was a clip with the president on stage with the players when they were receiving the trophy, and Cole Palmer was right behind the president. You could clearly read, you could read his facial expressions very easily, but you could even read his lips saying something to the effect, what is he doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why is he here?
The scene, and you mentioned it before, I mean, I think with World Cup next year, he's going to go where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Infantino has obviously decided that President Trump is a partner and will be there. It was interesting, him basically trying multiple times to get him off the stage. It clearly didn't work. But then after the trophy went up, him going in and them fading back into the group of Chelsea players celebrating to get him off the stage was interesting. So I know that Infantino might have to be thinking about how they're going to manage that, I think, in the future. But you said, Chelsea, interesting thing about Chelsea is they've kind of started playing well, and obviously they hit their stride in this tournament, but they are a Premier League team. Now, I'm not saying that any of these other leagues, and I think PSG as Champions Club winner, UEFA Champions Club winner, says something about them, and I don't know how worn out they were when they got to this tournament, but Chelsea plays in Premier League, and that means something. I still think that is the most competitive league on the planet, and this partly, to me, supports that, this Chelsea win.
Yeah, I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I am very curious to see if they can carry through this success to the Premier League. Liverpool was the class of the league last year. Man City had a little bit of a down year. I'm really excited about this upcoming season to see where those storylines are going. Take a break, partner?
Let's do it.
Okay, we'll be back in just a minute. We are back. We do not have a guest today, as you've probably surmised by now. And while we love every one of our guests, I like these types of episodes every once in a while. David, it's like sitting at the proverbial bar shooting the shit, right? So now's the point in the show where we take a look forward, give shout-outs, thank our listeners. What's on your mind?
So a shout-out to start with. I do need to pay tribute to the late, great Leiweke, who died on recently on July 9th.
Sorry. I'm not laughing.
I know you're not.
I'm not laughing at his passing. I'm laughing at the most famous post-game rant in MLB
and that's
history.
That's the point I want to make, because sometimes I don't think Leiweke gets his due, because his rant, honestly, it's like Mount Rushmore of rants, and then there's Leiweke rants. It's like he gets his own statue in my view. Jim Mora, Piker, in my opinion. The only one that came close in my mind is the Mike Gundy, I'm a man, I'm 40. I love that rant. I thought that was great, the Oklahoma State coach at the time. But the Leiweke rant at the fans of the Chicago Cubs in 1983 is when it happened, was just legendary, and anyone that hasn't heard it, you're missing something. Make sure, I'm not going to say that much more other than the language is salty.
Yeah,
And
get the unexpurgated
yeah.
version. Don't get the
Ooh.
ones with the beeps.
Ooh, yeah, the beeps, yeah, ruin it.
Don't do
Yeah.
it justice.
He has a thing or two to say about the quality of Chicago Cubs fans of that era that showed up at the ballpark.
I haven't listened to it in quite some time, but I believe one stat he cited was 98% of people work. The other 2% come out to day baseball.
I think it was something close. He goes, yeah, I think it was 85% maybe or something. It might have been more than that. And he goes, the whole thing was based on the fact that the people that show up during the day, because they only played day games then, there was no night games until 1988 in Chicago, that they were the ones that came out and they were losers and they just didn't support the team, and it was great. Lasorda on quantity had a good career as a ranter, but it was quantity. None of his reached that level. Anyway, that's a shout out. Two quick things. One of my predictions early in the year was that F1 would very possibly pick a streamer to be their U.S. broadcast partner. I said that I thought that was going to be Netflix. It really looks like Apple's not only in play, but about to get this done. And the bid would seriously increase the amount of money that Formula One is getting for those rights that they've been with ESPN. And I think coming off of the success of the movie, which it's an Apple production, it's an Apple original, I think they believe they have something there. So it looks like they're the favorite for that. Supposedly the bid is $150 million, which is certainly more than ESPN wanted to go.
This is to all the fans out there. Remember what Kenny Rogers and Kim Carnes said back in 1980. Don't fall in love with a streamer. I'll see myself out.
Do you other than the fact that was a great reference as well as a tie into this, do you think that it's potentially problematic?
No.
Okay. All right. The other thing I have my eye on, of course, is the expansion news. Again, one of my predictions from the year, and there's so many things going on. The Portland Trailblazers are now going to be up for sale as part of the will of Paul Allen, and it looks like they could wait on what that number fetches. It's not going to get what the Lakers got, but it is expected to be around in the $4 billion area. And how will that affect expansion? And then they have the whole national RSN thing that Commissioner Silver certainly wants to move for. There are some teams that don't want to necessarily go there, but it looks like it's going to happen. And that is all a part of this expansion number. What are they distributing from the new TV deal? What will they be distributing from the entry fees for expansions? And there are a couple teams that are locked into their own RSN deals that can't go on to this national streaming deal right away. So it's very interesting. So I got my eye on that story.
Well, and speaking of sales, the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be sold for what's being reported as $1.7 billion to a Jacksonville businessman who says he's going to keep the club in Tampa. Now, that seems like a really small amount of money based on what other teams are going for. But when your stadium's sitting in a pile of rubble, you don't have a lot of leverage on the sales thing. I've got a couple of shout outs too, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One is to your boy Shane Van Gisbergen, who won his third race in the Cup Series. He won on the road course at Sonoma. He is just dominating on the road course. Third win this year, but he's only 26th in the NASCAR standings, which shows that he is for lack of a better term, a one-trick pony.
He's got to develop his oval racing for sure, but
Shane,
amazing.
One piece of advice: turn left. Also, want to give a shout out to Grace Kim, who won the Evian Championship this past weekend in spectacular fashion. She eagled on 18 to force a playoff, and then on the first playoff hole, she hit it into the water and went up and down when she got out of the water and won on the second playoff hole. So kudos to her. That's pretty ballsy on both the 18th and the first playoff hole.
Yeah. Wow.
I've never done it. I've never done either. Never eagled and never up and down out of the water. I've hit it into the water. Trust me. I can probably coach her on that if she needs any help on hitting into the water.
Come on, you've eagled. You probably knocked down a hole-in-one on a par 3 at a putt-putt or something. That's legit.
Yeah. The closest thing I've ever come to that is karaoke, Steve Miller Band. I'll let it to our listeners to look up that reference. Because that's even older than Don't Fall in Love with a Dreamer. All right. I think I need to end this
in this
ridiculousness, this mishigas. So thank you for those of you who are listening. I'm getting, I don't know about you, David, but I'm getting more and more notes from people that are calling out particular things that we talk about, which tell me they're actually listening. Because a lot of times, and I've done this too, I think you have too, you tell somebody, oh, I love your podcast, and you're not listening to the podcast. You just know they have a podcast, so you're being nice, and you say, oh, I love your podcast, and you're not really listening to the podcast. I think we get that a lot, but I'm getting more and more people who are referencing particular bits or items that we've talked about, which tells me they are listening. So thank you, people who are listening.
I think they're all listening. I take everyone at their word, Tim. I might be naive, but I believe in people, and I believe in this podcast. And I want you, and I want you to too, yeah. And I want you to love this podcast too.
Well, to paraphrase the great Marshall Crenshaw, I'm going out looking for a cynical girl who's got no use for the real world. So anyway, for those of you who do listen, thank you. Please like us, follow us, subscribe, tell your friends about it. We'll be back next week. I'll be on the road from Austin for the Major League Soccer All-Star festivities.
Right, but we have a really fun guest next week, too.
We do have a fun guest. So until then, he's DP, I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.